Well, hello there. Today we're going to be creating a system that allows us to highlight objects that we're looking at and pick them up if they're within range. This is going to cover a really simple setup where we're going to highlight or outline objects with custom depth, set up the inputs that allows us to pick them up, and then also throw them away if we've already got something in our hands. And with that said, let's get into the tutorial. Alrighty, so let's make a highlight and pickup system. So we're going to be using a pre-existing outline material that we actually created in a past tutorial. If you haven't actually seen it yet, it looks something like this. And as I said, we cover it in a past tutorial, so I'll leave a little link in the description. If you go and watch that now and then come back, we're just going to modify this slightly so that we can highlight our pickup item. Alright, so the only thing we actually have to do here is add a new outline mask. So if we copy and paste this up here, like this, and rename this to, let's say, green outline. It can be whatever color you like. Cool. And then if we add this in by creating an add, you can either hold A and left click to create an add, or you can right click and type in add. We just want to chuck this guy into here, this guy into here, and drop that into the saturate here that we've got, which will add it into the main render pass. And then we want to drag all the way out here, saturate this for safety, and then we want to drag out here, type in lerp, like that. And we're going to connect this outline color that we've already got into A, like that. And we're going to duplicate this color here, change this to green, something like that for now, will be cool. Chuck that guy into B, chuck the saturate into the alpha, and then drop this lerp into A here. And just get rid of that for now. Save this, compile. And what this is doing is saying that if we aren't this green outline, then paint it red. And if it's not red, then paint it, you know, the normal scene color. And all we need to do here now is set the green outline value to something other than these ones here. So let's say 4. So our green value will be the value of 4. So we compile, save, and we can close this down. Now if we go back to our folder that we're working in, we're going to have to make a couple of assets here. First of which is actually the pickup. So if we make a blueprint class and make an actor, and we type in BP underscore pickup, like that, and just drag this guy into here, maybe like around here somewhere. Cool. And if we go in here, this guy over here, and we add in a cube for now. Just shrink this down a little bit, like this. You can see in the scene. Yeah, something like that. Cool. And if we go down to here, the next thing we're going to create is an interface. If you're new to interfaces, it's basically just a giant folder that communicates with all blueprints that it's implemented with. And if we right click and under blueprints, create an interface, and we call it int underscore interactions, like this, and we double click, chuck this guy over here, we'll just make this a little bit bigger. And if we rename the first function in here to look at, like that, and we add an input in here and rename it to state, but keep it as a boolean. We're going to use this function to actually tell the pickup to highlight itself. And if we add another one in here and call it pick up, and add in another input, and this time we want an actor, like this one, just an object reference, and just call this actor for now. Cool. And compile and save that. And this is actually going to pass along the reference so that your character can actually pick up the object into its own hands and then drop it if it needs to. Cool. The next thing we need to do is actually create a player controller. Most of the time when I do this sort of functionality, I don't do it through the character pawn. I saw a lot of tutorials online that do that, and I just, from my experience, I tend to keep it within the player controller instead, so that's the way that I'm going to do it. in this basic scene, it doesn't actually have a player controller. So if we create a player controller and we call this PC underscore highlight underscore T for tutorial, and we jump in here, just open this guy up, and we'll just full screen this for now at the moment. And we'll go into the event graph. There's actually a couple of ways we can do this depending on the type of game you're making. Right now I'm going to show you the line trace way, but I'll also show off a slightly different version, again just depending on your game. So if we right click and we type in sphere trace by object, like that, and we chuck this guy into the tick for now. We move ourselves down here a little bit, and we right click, get player camera manager, like that, and you drag out and you get camera location, like this. And then if you right click again and get pawn, drag out this and get controller, like this guy here. If you drag out here again, get controller rotation. And if we chuck this guy into the start, and then we add a vector, like here. And then if we drag out here again and get forward vector, and multiply this by a large number, maybe like 1,000 or something like that. Chuck this guy into here, just neaten this up a little bit, like this. Press Q to straighten up a little bit. Chuck this guy into here. What this is doing, it's basically going to fire a laser out from where the camera is to a location that's 1,000 units in the forward direction of the camera. And all we need to do now is set some of the parameters here. So if we drag out here in object types and we make array, and for this tutorial I'm going to set this to destructible for now, and I'll show you guys why in a second. And radius wise, this really just depends on how precise you want the player's aim to be. I tend to put it to about 40, but if you want it more precise, you just put a lower number. You could put it to 0 if you like. And on this side will be the sort of results of this hitting actors. So if we drag out here and create a branch, this is just going to make sure if it doesn't hit anything, then it won't do anything, essentially. And if we pull it here and we break this, these are going to be the results of our trace. Now we need a few variables here for this to work out. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on hit actor. We're going to promote to variable, and we're going to call this look at actor. And we're going to add to this old, like this. And we're going to duplicate this one by highlighting it and Control W. And we're just going to rename this to look at actor curtain, like this. And then we're just going to make a new variable in here altogether, and it's going to be a Boolean type, and we will call this looking at. Cool. We can just get rid of this for now as well. So we've got our list of variables here. Sick. All right, so first of all, we need to check if this actually has some of the credentials that we're going to be looking for. So if we save this up for now, and we go to our pickup item in here, and we go to class settings and down to interfaces. If you go to add and we type in our interface name, which is int underscore interactions, like this, compile that and save. And then we go into the event graph. Now that we've actually got this interface implemented into this actor, we can now call these from almost anywhere in the game, which is pretty cool. So if we right click on look at and implement event like this, and we get our cube here, and we drag out and we type in custom depth stencil value here, Let me just chuck this guy into here for now. Let me drag out of here and type in select like that, and we connect the state to the index, and that will change the value slightly there for you. And what we want to say is, if it's true, it's going to be 4, which is the value that we had in our material for the green. And if it's not, we're going to either put it to 0 or some other value. We'll put it to 0 for now. Cool. Now, just another thing here, just to make sure this actually works, you will need to change your settings for the stencil value to work. So if we just come out here and go up to edit, project settings, and chuck this guy over here. And if you type in custom depth, under post-processing, you'll have a little value here called custom depth stencil paths. I think as standard it's enabled. You need to put it to enabled with stencil, and then this will all work for you. Also, I'm working on a game called Button Pop. There's a load of devlogs up now, and we just released a coming soon page on Steam, so go check that out. We really just appreciate you guys' feedback, and we'd love to hear what you think. If you're interested in the game at all, go check out our devlogs and wishlist it on Steam. Cool. If we go back here and go into PC highlight _T, and we go back to our break results, we're going to want to check if this actor actually has that interface implemented. So if we drag out here and we say does implement interface like this, and we just need to find the right interface, so we do int _interface interactions like that. Cool. We just make a little branch like this, connect this guy up like this. Cool. And if it is, we're going to start setting things. So we're going to drag out current one, set this to true, and we're going to drag this guy into here and just neaten this up a tiny wee bit like this. Cool. And then after this, we're going to check if the old one, which we're going to set in just a second, is actually valid. So we're going to drag out, we're going to say valid like this. And if this is set, we're going to call our lookat outline. So we're going to copy and paste this up to here. We're going to drag out and type in look at under interactions like that. And we can just drag into that and turn it on. And that's just all this is saying is going to turn on our outline if we're looking at this actor, but only the old one, not the new one. But we actually need to do a really quick check in here to see if the old one is the same as the new one. So if we drag out the old and the current, and we say, is this equal to this? We'll put a branch in here. And if it is, outline. If it's not, we're going to do something else. So if it is not, we're going to type in look at, and we're going to turn it off like this. And then we're going to set the old to the new, or the current, like this. And we're just going to chuck this guy into here, because if the old one isn't valid, then the new one is the new old, if that makes sense. And what this is actually going to be doing here is essentially saying that if you aren't looking at the old one anymore, turn it off. That's all that means. And if you are still looking at it, turn it on. And now all we need to do is turn on the new target. So if we drag out here and type in look at that and turn that guy on, and chuck this variable in here just behind this node and turn that on too, just so we actually know for a fact that it is looking at an object. And then also duplicate this guy up here like that, compile that, save. This should now outline the pickup. Now the only thing we need to do now is have a consequence for not actually looking at something. So if we go up to here and we drag out look at actor old, and we say is valid, like this, and we chuck that guy into there and chuck this guy into here, like that. Just make a wee bit of space for this. And if we duplicate this up here and type in look at, if it's valid, we're going to turn it off. And we're going to make sure that the look at Boolean variable is going to be turned off regardless of if it's valid or not, like this. And essentially this is saying that if we have at some point looked at another actor and now we're not looking at it, we're going to be turning it off. And if we haven't looked at it, we're definitely not looking at it anyway. I'm not looking, I swear. Cool. Now, the only thing we need to do to get this to work now is if we browse to this asset, which is here, we need to actually plug it into our world settings. So if you go to your world settings here, it should just be down here, and you drag this into player controller class like this, and we play the game. It doesn't work. Now let's see why it doesn't work. Now the first thing we can do to actually debug this is to turn on the actual debug type in the object trace. So if we save, compile, go in here and play again. Are we firing this off? Yes, we are. And it's not actually seeing this object. And that's because, if we remember, I set this to look for destructible. And our pickup, if we go to our pickup blueprint and we click on our cube and go down to collision, we haven't actually set that yet, which is fine. So if we go to block all dynamics and we go to custom, and if you go down to object type and turn this to destructible, the reason that I've actually decided to use destructible in this example is that it's usually not a widely used collision type. So if you've got something very special like a pickup or something like a weapon or a charm or something, you could use a vehicle or destructible, or even make a new channel for that sort of stuff. Because if you use something like world static or world dynamic or pawn or anything like that, your world's filled with these. So it's just going to be colliding with all this sort of stuff constantly, which might end up being a wee bit tricky. And the only other thing we need to do here as well is go down into rendering, or type in custom. We need to actually turn on the custom depth here. We just click that on, compile, save. And then if we play the game, highlights, sick. And unhighlights when we don't look at it. Nice. Now, as you can see, there's quite a wide area for that to actually pick up on the outline. So if you want to tweak that, go right ahead, it's not a problem. The other thing we can actually do here is if you right click in here, go down to user interface, create a widget, and we call this W_cursor. Open this guy up like this, and just so we can actually see where we're aiming right now, I'm going to create a sort of little dot thing. So if we just drag in a border like that, and if we center this, put it to 0.5, 0.5, and if we just make this maybe 20 by 20, ooh, that looks big, maybe 10 by 10, and just save that, close it down. And if we go back into our player controller in here, and on begin play, if we right click and create widget like this, and type in our cursor, or get our cursor, just connect that gap, and if we drag out here and we add to viewport like this, we should now be able to see where our center is. Yeah, cool, like that. So that should be roughly where it is, like that. Now if we go down here and we turn off our debug stuff like this, The only thing we need to do now is how do we actually pick it up? And this is actually a really fairly easy thing now that we've set all these parameters up. So the first thing we're going to do is actually get the item to despawn or delete itself. So if we go back to our pickup and we go down to the pickup option that we've created and right click and implement it. We give ourselves a wee bit of space here. And we just drag out and we say destroy. And that's it. And we save, compile, and we can just close that down altogether if we want. And we can close down the interaction one altogether. Now the only thing we actually need to modify now is mostly in our player character. So if we just open this guy up, which is in this case going to be the mannequin. So if we say third person character, we'll just open this guy up here like this, and yours should pretty much be empty here. This is just from past tutorials in the basic setup. And all we need to do here is implement our interface. So if we go to class settings and we add in int interaction like that, compile, save, and we go down to interfaces and we chuck in pickup like this here. This is actually going to drive our ability to pick it up and drop it. So the way that I tend to do things is that I would make a child actor inside your character class, and then you kind of replace or swap out items. You could just spawn it in if you like, but I think that's a little bit less performant. So if we go into our viewport and we add in a child actor, and this works really well specifically because we're working with another blueprint, since the pickup isn't just a static mesh. And if we put this under the mesh and we find the hand, let's say the right hand, like this guy here, cool. And we're just going to position this guy a wee bit better. So we're going to pause the animation and pop this down a little bit, like into his hand, like this, and turn the animation back on. Cool. And if we go back into our event graph and drag out the child actor like this, we're now going to play about with this to actually set that to our pickup item. So if we drag out and we get child actor and we make sure that this is valid or not, let me just connect this guy up like this. Cool. And if it isn't valid, we're going to set it to exactly this item. So if we duplicate this along and we drag out and say set class, set child actor class like this. Cool. And we drag out here and we say get class like this. We chuck that guy in there. This will now set this actor to whatever we are actually looking at whenever we press a certain button, and we'll set that up in a second. But if it is actually valid, we're going to do something else. So if it is valid and we press the button, i.e. if we already have something in our hands, we want to drop it. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this up here like this, and we're going to leave this blank, and we're going to right click and type in spawn actor of class and chuck this guy into here, chuck this guy into here like that, and we're going to set this to the same class. So let's say it's the pickup like this. And what we could actually do, just to make sure this is the correct thing, we could get child of class and then put that guy into there, and then that's absolute definite. Save, compile. And what we want to do is spawn this a little bit in front of the player. So if we get actor location like this, and we add a vector, if I can spell, like this, and we chuck this guy into here, like that. And if we pull out our capsule component and we get forward vector, and we just multiply this by maybe like 50 or something. We chuck this guy into here. This basically just means that it will spawn this actor 50 units in front of this location, which is where this actor is. Cool. So if we save this, this is all complete. Now, if we just chuck this guy into here, if we go back to our player controller, which is in here, we need a way of actually interacting with the pickup. So I've already got an action input, but you can make them by going to project settings and then down to input, and you're going to have this list of little inputs. I have one called action input here, which is just bound to the E. So if you click the little plus sign, which is just going to give you this, you can call action input. You can connect that to whatever gesture you want. So I say the E key, but it could be anything you like. But we're going to use action input and it's set to E here. If you set that up. And if we close this down and go back to our player controller and in here, and you right click and you type in action input like this, this will now give you a little event to say when you press E or whatever key you would like, it will do X. It will do a thing basically. Cool. So now all we need to do is check if we're actually looking at something. Drag this out and create a branch like this. And if we are looking at something, we're going to want to pick it up. So first of all, if we right click and type in get pawn, because our character is our pawn, we can now call the pickup. Type in pick up, like that. Chuck this guy into here, like this. And we're going to pick up the old one here, since that is what has been set up here, like this. And the only thing we might want to do before here is just make sure that this is actually valid, because it might cause some issues later if you don't. So if we drag out, type in valid is valid, connect that guy up like this. And now if you remember in the pickup, we actually have this function in there too. So if we go to our pickup, open that up, here, we have a pickup here that says whenever this is called, it will destroy itself. So if we go back into our controller and we copy our old actor and we drag out and type in pickup like this, and just before we call this, we're going to put a delay here. You can either hold D and left click or type in delay for that. And if we just put this to 0.05 for now, chuck that guy into there, what's going to happen is that the pawn will spawn this actor in its hands and it will destroy the current one on the floor. And the last thing we need to do is actually just say what happens if we're not looking at something. So if we chuck this guy down here like this, what this will do is in our character, it will call this function, and because this is valid, it's going to actually spawn the item in the world, and it's going to set whatever's in our hand to 0 or null, so it's basically deleting the object. Now the last thing we need to do is make sure that the actual pickup doesn't interfere with the player at all, and when you actually drop it, it physically drops to the floor and bounces about a little bit. So at the moment, if we play the game like this and move this away, interacts, it outlines, it doesn't outline, and then if you press E, pick it up. But if I move, it's going to kind of be a wee bit weird, a bit glitchy. And yeah, if you press E again, it just kind of floats there, which is a bit of an issue. So we stop the game and we go to our pickup in here, A really quick and easy way to actually fix this is to see if this is a child actor of the main player class. So if we right click and create a branch like this, and we get parent actor like this, what we could say is class, get class, and if this is equal to the third person character like this, then do a thing or don't do a thing. So if we chuck this guy into here like that, neaten this guy up. If it is a child of the third person character, we're going to want to make sure that the cube isn't simulated, so we're going to set simulate physics. We're just going to make sure that's turned off. And we're also going to make sure that it doesn't have collision on it, so we're going to set collision enabled, and we're just going to keep that as off like this here. Neaten that up a wee bit like that. Cool. And as I said, just keep that as no collision. But if it isn't a child of the player character, we're going to duplicate this, make this to false, we're going to turn on simulation, and we're going to drag out and type in impulse, add impulse, like here, just neaten this up again, oops, like this, and then we're going to add this maybe 100 or something like that. I'm going to compile, save, and then if we play the game now, it's got a little bit of physics to it, which is cool. And if we press E, we can run about quite nicely. If we press E again, we throw it down. We press E again without looking at anything, we're not going to pick anything up. We press E now, we pick it up, press E again, cool, sick. Now the only little detail here I want to add is that in the player controller, where we're doing the line trace, I want to add a little limitation to it so that when the character is a certain distance away, it doesn't interact with them. So if we go down to your break hit results, we can use the distance here. Some people might say that you should actually just limit your trace distance, which is fair. If this is used specifically for this circumstance, I would recommend like just minimizing this so that it's maybe, you know, half or something. But if this is going to be reused throughout your game and for different purposes, maybe something that's really far away and short and stuff, you can use the distance variable here to actually tell you what you can and can't do depending on the object. So if we drag out and we say is more than roughly 550-ish or something like that, and we put a branch in here, and we connect this up here, and this into here, and chuck the false into this. So if it's not more than 550, so if it's less than 550, it should highlight. So if I play now, and I look at it, it doesn't highlight. But if I get a wee bit closer, it highlights. Cool. Sick. Alright, so before I go, I did mention that there was an alternative way of doing this in regards to the line trace, just depending on the game that you're making. If you're making a third person or first person shooter, something like that, the line trace is the way to go. But if you are making a sort of game where the mouse is a key part, or maybe you can like click on things or hover over things with the cursor, there's actually a sort of better way of doing this. So if we go into our player controller, which is a PC underscore highlight T, and just open this guy up, and instead of using the sphere trace, which we can still do, it might be better if we use the under cursor node. So if we right click and type in under cursor, and we can basically get the exact same thing here, so for objects, and this node will return all the same information as the line trace, except it's whatever is underneath the cursor. So if we connect this guy up here, just kind of replace some of these, so like the hit result and the return value, like that. And if we just connect this guy up here for now, like this, and compile, The only thing we need to do here now is make sure that we actually can see the cursor. So if we right click and type in set show mouse cursor, like this, and just on begin play should be fine at the moment. If we tick this on, compile and save, and if we play the game, you'll notice that if we aim the center at the box, it doesn't highlight. And if we cursor over it from here, it doesn't highlight. However, if we go a wee bit closer, like under 550 units, it will, which is kind of cool. And if we hover over here and press E, we pick it up. So yeah, I think that's the end of this tutorial. If you guys are wanting to see anything particular on the channel for tutorials, leave a comment down below. I'm always checking them out and helping people out with little issues and stuff. I'm currently working on a game called Button Pot. The Coming Soon page has just been released on Steam, so go check it out and wishlist it, and maybe check out some of the devlogs on my channel as well. But yeah, with that said, see you guys later. Bye! If you go up to it and it highlights and you interact with it. It's clearly a feature, not a bug at all.